I am a representative of Generation X, generation that's dying. You're starting to get up there. I went to high school in the 80s. The number one sitcom was The Cosby Show. Number one talk show, Oprah Winfrey. Number one music star, Michael Jackson. We did not have the racial tension that we have now. We did not have all the race baiting, the constant focus on race. We didn't have all the talk about white guilt and white privilege. None of that existed. We weren't obsessed with slavery and segregation because that crap happened so long ago, and that was the 80s. We weren't obsessed with that crap in the 80s because it was so long ago. Now 1980 is 40 years ago, so we're talking about 30 to 40 years ago. And today, absolute obsession, constant indoctrination, constant race baiting, 400 years of slavery, 400 years of slavery, 400 years of slavery. That's all there is to this country, 400 years of slavery. Never mind the Great Reckoning, which was the Civil War, to end slavery. Never mind the amazing progress that's been made over the past 60 years. They never talk about progress. The people that indoctrinate others with this hatred of this country and themselves never talk about the progress. Don't talk about World War II, where we drove the Nazis out of Africa and Europe. They just talk about the negative history of this country. And just like any country, there's a negative history and a positive history. Now, personally, I believe we have so many positive things in our history, including all that progress that's been made. That's something to celebrate. I also think we have an amazing foundation of our country, a foundation based on individual rights and liberty, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion. Not all countries have that. We are seeing protests over the last week, these protests over the death of George Floyd, where if there were protests against the government in other countries, they would be gunned down. Look at Syria. You are not allowed to protest government in certain other parts of the country. Try doing that in China. Try doing that to Iran. And by the way, China and Iran, they're making fun of us because of all this unrest and destruction that's going on. They're judging us. Freedom of religion. I'm an atheist. It's fine to be an atheist in this country. Other countries, if you say there is no God, you can be arrested or murdered. In Bangladesh, outspoken atheists butchered in broad daylight. So these freedoms are precious, but we're not taught that. Or at least people today aren't taught that. Just a negative. 400 years of slavery. They act like the United States of America invented slavery from Africa. It all started here. They don't talk about how it started in South America much earlier, how it started in Europe much earlier, parts of the Middle East much earlier. This indoctrination, this hatred to teach us to hate ourselves and to hate our country. And it's not just a United States of America thing. It's a UK thing. People in England taught to hate their country and hate themselves so much that they allow mass immigration from other countries and for years allow their daughters to be raped. Now, how much do you have to hate yourself to allow that to happen? So where is all this coming from? Because in the 80s, all this hatred, all this race baiting, all this division did not exist. And that's not to say the 80s were perfect, but man, they were sure a hell of a lot more peaceful than they are now. And people sure had a lot more fun than the people now. There's so many uptight assholes today. So many people with a giant stick up their ass. Where is this all coming from? Now, one of the places is colleges. Professors that hate themselves and hate their country, indoctrinating students to hate themselves and hate their country. And this has been allowed to happen. Colleges used to be a place where kids were supposed to go to think for themselves. It was Socratic. The idea was teaching you how to think, not what to think. But now they're just indoctrination centers of these bitter professors that hate themselves and hate their country, indoctrinating students that way. And this has been allowed to go on. You have white liberals who keep pushing white guilt, white privilege, and who treat black people like they're handicapped. They treat black people like they're handicapped and therefore need low expectations. I have been with liberals where they start, and we're there with black people, and they'll say, they'll tell the black person, oh, you know what? I don't know what it's like to live up or anything about being black. Like, oh, that might be so hard. You don't even know this person. Why don't you ask them, hey, where did you grow up? How was your childhood? Do you have any brothers and sisters, your parents? Why don't you talk to them before assuming that they've had such a horrible life? Like, oh, they're black. Oh, gee, I'm really sorry. How was that? How was it growing up in the ghetto and being poor? I mean, just what a stereotype and so ridiculous. And let me tell you something. I'm Generation X who grew up in Chicago. You put me with anybody in my generation that grew up in that city, we'll start talking. We have so many things in common. I mean, this constant focus, drumbeat about race, 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 everything's about race. It is such bullshit, and it's so sad, especially with white liberals that think they're the ones being anti-racist when they're the ones being the racist. It's just so sad. And there's just so much ignorance. And obviously this country isn't perfect. There isn't any country that's perfect. But there's some damn positive things that we should be proud of that are never talked about. You'll never hear these people talk about progress. You notice that? They'll never talk about progress. They just want to keep talking like it's the 1920s, it's the 1820s, and they've been allowed just with this constant indoctrination, and that's what we're seeing now. So much hatred for this country, and people that hate it so much that they think it should be completely burned down and rebuilt, because whatever it's rebuilt to will be so much better. Well, guess what? You tear it down, it'll be rebuilt into something much, much worse. You want to see a revolution? Look at the revolution that happened in Iran in 1979. Revolution doesn't mean you're going to have a positive outcome. Revolution doesn't mean you're going to get something better. And the people that don't appreciate what they have, when they lose it, it's going to be too late. Very sad, just really sad. Constant indoctrination for people to hate themselves and hate their country. It's disgusting. And it's not my generation. It's certainly not how things are in the 80s. We're in the 80s. I don't know why they're that way now. But we're going to see how this all plays out. And there's got to be some changes. I mean, if people feel a certain way, then they feel a certain way, and you can't take that away. You can talk about statistics, you can talk about progress, but the bottom line is, they feel a certain way. So this system is a system that can be reformed. Obviously, we've seen a divide between the rich and the poor that's gotten bigger and bigger. There are ways to adjust, to fix that. Hell, we got a minimum wage. We can talk about a maximum wage. We can talk about greater taxes on dividends. We can talk about greater taxes based on income after a certain level. We can talk about universal basic income. There's a whole lot of things we can do policy-wise to close that gap between rich and poor. This is a system that can be reformed, and it has a solid foundation based on individual rights and liberties. It has so many things that we don't want to lose. So the people that just want to burn it down completely, I think they're idiots. I think they're morons, and they think something better is going to rise. These are extremely naive people, and they will seriously screw things up. So we'll see what happens, but just wanted to express my thoughts, and I can't be the only one looking at this. I've never gone through anything like this. Rodney King riots weren't anything like this, and that happened after the verdict, where the police officers got off. Not what happened here, where there hasn't even been a verdict on a police officer that had his knee on George Floyd's neck. The other police officers were there, but they did not have their knee on his neck for that period of time. That was that one officer, and all of them did lose their job. And I don't think there's any doubt that this guy is going to be going to prison. So I don't know, man. It's just sad. It's just sad to see what's going on right now. And I think it is the result of constant indoctrination and dishonest indoctrination, disgustingly biased indoctrination to hate this country. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Please share yours. This is Jim Wall. Until next time.
Cisco, do we have to leave all our good friends now?
Only until next time, Pancho. Adios, amigos.